Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Naruto Mastered How to Edit Seals Part 7. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Not long after she finished cooking, the smell of food was strong enough to wake Anko up. The purple-haired Tokubetsu Junin shuffled into the kitchen with a yawn. She was still wearing the same clothes she had worn to bed the night before. Kurenai had seen the clothes at the end of the bed, but when she saw her best friend wearing only underwear and a fishnet top, it hit her and made her frown. Naruto had just turned 12, so a 22-year-old shouldn't have shared a bed with a 12-year-old half-dressed. Anko should have known that. Kurenai did feel a little bit envious of her friend. Not because she had slept in Naruto's bed, but because the woman seemed so close to and at ease with the boy. Since she and Naruto started over, she was feeling better, but she still had a long way to go before she felt she could do something as simple as hug him. I'll just have to ask Anko to hug me more to make up for the fact that I don't hug her enough. As it was, she still found it hard to be in a room alone with him. Lucky for her, there were other people around, like Anko, who let her talk to him. She gave a small frown at the thought. It took her a long time to get used to being around men, and then Naruto came along and turned everything on its head. That wasn't true, though. His father did the same thing, and she loved and hated the man because he always made her nervous. He was, after all, Namikaze Minato and could take care of himself when he pushed her instincts too far. On the other hand, his son had always seemed so weak, and it was a constant struggle between wanting to protect him when he was young and knowing that she was just as much a threat to him as long as her instincts told her he was. She knew it was silly to think that he could be dangerous to her, but her body didn't care about what made sense. Like his father before him, the boy made her nervous, and each time her body fought to react. It was a miracle that she was always able to control herself so well after she didn't have to with Minato. No matter if it was a miracle or not, it got easier every day. She was getting better, and it didn't matter why. The important thing was that she was getting better. It could have been because she was getting used to having her nerves so tense when she was around him, or because he seemed more and more able to defend himself if she fell, or a combination of both. Who can say? Before he was done growing up, she might get the chance to be the sister she had always wanted to be for him. When she thought about him growing up, she imagined what he might look like in a few years. If he turned out to be anything like she imagined, she couldn't blame Anko for trying to claim him early. She could be disappointed, though, that her friend chose to start so early. She must have been able to wait until at least Chunin. No one, of any age, would have thought anything of it. Legally, you might be an adult when you graduate high school, but no one thought you were one until you hit Chunin. After all, anyone who can become a Chunin can't call themselves a child anymore. There was just no way to mix the two. That smells good, her friend said, pulling her out of her thoughts. I would hope so, because it would make me feel bad to feed Naruto's food and then have to throw it away. Anko told her to go away and sat down. Don't worry about it. He would have expected me to help myself. Whether or not the food was eaten doesn't matter when he knows it will be gone. Kurenai frowned at that because she hated wasting food, but it showed how comfortable they were with each other. So, did you come over for something else besides making me breakfast? You make it sound like this is your house, Anko, said the Tokubetsu Junin. She just shrugged and took a bite of her food. It's possible. I'm here enough already, and it wouldn't be hard to persuade him to let me move in and live there for free. She pointedly looked at Anko's clothes and asked, and how do you plan to convince him if you don't show a little more skin? The woman quickly got it. Oh, right, I forgot about that, she said, and at least she blushed. I should probably keep a few changes of clothes here, or at least something to sleep in. Anko raised an eyebrow. You do realize you were in bed with a 12-year-old in that, right? What's the use? She couldn't help but shake her head. It was easy to forget that Orochimaru of the Sannin had taught Anko how to fight and had pretty much raised him. Her morals were sometimes a little off from what most people thought was right. I think you already have enough problems with the people of Konoha. Do you really need to give them a good reason to hate you? A good reason? What for? Like being a child molester, Anko said. She asked with a tilt of her head, is that how you see it? I thought I was going to stay with a friend. Your friend is 12 years old, and you're in your 20s. It might have seemed better to spend the night on the couch, but people outside the apartment would have known the difference. What do they think? Naruto knows what's going on. I know what's going on, and you know what's going on. Why should I care what they think? The way Kurenai looked made Anko frown, and she crossed her arms over her mesh top. You do realize that nothing like that has ever happened, right? Well, nothing, Kurenai. Anko yelled in anger. I thought you knew me better than that. You really think I'm going to hit on a 12-year-old boy? What am I supposed to think? Not only did you spend the night here, but you slept in his bed, probably with him, wearing almost nothing. Even if you're not a pedophile, you're going to look like a sex offender. Anko scowled. It looks like you're the only one who knows, she said. You know people will find out soon enough if you keep doing this, and it's not like you're trying to hide the fact that this is almost like your second home. So what? I'll still consider him a close friend whether or not other people do. But that's not the point, no, Anko said to stop him. The point is that you can't just accept that I slept in the same bed as someone else and are making assumptions. I don't know what I'm missing, because everything seems pretty clear to me. And that's your problem. It seems clear, but you don't know what's going on. As time went by, silence fell over the house. Kurenai was the one who broke it. She asked softly, tell me then, what happened? We went out to dinner, she said, and before Kurenai could say anything, she went on. Naruto paid for the three of us. It was late when we got back, and I didn't want to go home. Naruto offered to let us stay the night, and we accepted. At first, he was going to take the couch, but Mai wouldn't let him. I don't know how they know each other, but she treats him like he's her boss and won't kick him out of his own bed. That meant that they would have to share a bed, but I didn't want to sleep on the couch. Mai was only worried about Naruto sleeping in his own bed, so when I said I'd be joining him she decided to sleep on the couch. I'd like it to be known that I invited her into the bed. It would have been a little crowded, but I'm sure he wouldn't have minded. I see, said Kurenai, and then he didn't say anything for a few seconds. So you and Mai were the ones I was going to find in his room at first. I'm sorry, but knowing you had been sharing a bed with him while wearing so little. He let out a sigh. You've talked about wanting to be his sister before, so I guess I can see where you're coming from. But even if we did something like that, what would it matter? He's an adult, I'm an adult, we can make our own decisions. You might see him as the young boy your mother gave birth to, but I see him as the young man who freed me from Orochimaru's Ten no Juin. Hell, Anko said with a big smile to her friend. If he had been a few years older, I would have probably thanked him right there on the training ground by dropping my pants. Anko. Kidding. Anko waved her off. But, seriously, if he asks something of me, anything, I'm likely to do it. I can't even begin to describe how great it is to be free from that seal, and I owe it to him. I'm not going to go and make the first move, but I wouldn't turn him away if he did. He's a teen. Anko shrugged. She thought for a moment. I guess that just means it might be a while before he tries anything, but as a young teenage boy, he might ask to see my boobs. They would do that all the time, wouldn't they? I guess. Anko shook her head and said, no, if it's a normal thing to do, he's not likely to do it. What are they unlikely to do? Talk about things that matter, Anko said. Where are you going with this? Nowhere. I'm just guessing what he might ask of me. I don't think he'll ask. He's never depended too much on other people, and I've heard that's gotten even worse since Kushina left. That doesn't mean he won't want something. I've already offered to take him on some missions in my spare time, but he hasn't asked for training or anything. Hell, do you know what I could probably tell him? Anko, you're a traitor. Well, it hasn't happened yet, so I won't promise anything. Kurenai shook her head and sighed before going still. What do you mean? Send him on missions. Genin can't go on missions above D rank without their team. They didn't have enough graduates this year to put Naruto on a team, so he's on the reserves. Why him, though? She shrugged again. It might have something to do with the fact that he's no longer part of a clan, she said. I don't think they were going to try to stop one of the clan heirs from being put on a team. That would have been a nightmare. Then again, it could have nothing to do with that. Maybe the old man has something else in mind for Naruto. I guess that could be the case, but speaking of teams, there was a reason I was looking for you. Oh? I was wondering if you'd be willing to help me train mine. It would be easier if they were clanless, but they've all been trained to use only clan techniques, so it will take a while to make them more well-rounded. I guess so, but why would you find me to ask? We were going to meet the other Junin in a few days anyway. I'd like to start today, if that's not too much trouble. I didn't want the others to know I had help because I'm the new guy and they might make fun of me for not being able to do it. Anko laughed and let out a snort. Just think of it this way. 1 new Junin plus 1 Tokubetsu Junin equals 1 regular Junin. Anko, I don't think they'd buy that. No, but if they tried to argue against it, they'd look stupid. Kurenai had to agree that she was right. Probably. Anko, there was something else. Yeah. I wanted to say thanks. She said, "Hey, I know I'm great, but you don't have to thank me for being your friend." Kurenai then gave her a playful smack. No. I wanted to thank you for letting me into Naruto's life. He reached out to help you, and I can't help but think of you as the bridge that let me try again. I'd love to take credit for it, but I never meant to be your and the boys' therapist. You do realize you could just say, thank you, right? I could, but I won't. If you want to take me back to bed and thank me properly, though, you're welcome to. Anko. The wolves guarding the apartment could hear the shout and the laughter that followed. Many of them shook their heads. Naruto-sama did hang out with some strange people. As he walked into the room, he didn't say a word. Instead, he kept his eyes on his cage. He didn't pay any attention to the smiling woman after he first saw her. He gave the standard Konoha salute and waited for Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage of Konohagakure no Sato, to speak. Uzumaki Kushina's eyes were filled with hope, but her voice was not heard because the Sandaime kept looking at the young man in front of him. After a moment of silence, the old Sarutobi spoke up. Genin Naruto, thank you for coming on such short notice. Kushina looked at her cage funny when he called her son by his given name, even though the setting was very formal, but no one else seemed to notice. You called me here, Hokage-sama, he said. It wasn't a question, just the truth. When his cage called, he picked up the phone out of duty. The man understood what was being said. I did, and I'm sorry it's so early, but I'd like to get this taken care of as soon as possible, preferably before team meetings start. Naruto raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything else. Hiruzen nodded. May I ask how the other teams are involved? Yes, of course. I've called you to my office to talk about your future as a shinobi. Since you're not on a team right now, your career is likely to be very different from that of your peers. Okay, Hokage-sama. What would you like to talk about in terms of my career? Mostly the beginning. You're aware of your current situation and the problems it could cause, right? Yes, I am. As a reserve, I have to depend on shinobi with higher ranks to give me missions and the experience I need to get promoted. However, if I could prove myself capable among them quickly enough, my career could move forward quickly. Right on, said the Hokage. Do you know anyone who would be willing to help you, or do you need to find a newly promoted Chunin? Tokubetsu Junin Midarashi Anko has offered to take me on missions when she has time off work. From what I hear, the T&I department has been slow lately, so she has a lot of free time. Anko? Hiruzen thought as he rubbed his chin. She might be a good fit for you. She's not as serious as you are, but she knows how to get the job done and doesn't care about anything but the results. You might not move up quickly if you work for her, but you'll learn a lot. I think pretty much the same thing, Hokage-sama. Midarashi-san and I are friends outside of work, so I'm fine with letting her lead missions. Oh, so you two are friends. I'm glad to see she has more friends than just Kurenai-san. Now, back to why I called you here this morning, she said to Kushina as she moved closer to the desk. He said, this is Uzumaki Kushina, who is one of my most skilled Junin. Naruto and Hiruzen both saw her flinch when she met her child, but they didn't say anything about it. When Naruto turned to face her, his salute dropped, but he was back in place just as quickly. He gave a nod and said, Junin Uzumaki. She flinched again when she heard the formal address, but she managed to do the same. Genin Uzumaki, she said when she got back. She noticed that his eyes had darkened and that her cage had become very still. Hiruzen got Naruto's attention back by coughing to break the awkward silence that had started to get worse. Genin Naruto, he said again, giving Kushina a quick look. Your plans with Tokubetsu Junin Midarashi came as a pleasant surprise, and I'm glad to hear them. However, I originally wanted to talk to you about another option, so I called you here today. Hiruzen pointed to Kushina, who was looking at him with a puzzled look on her face. She had to know that something was going on that she didn't know about. The only question was how long it would take her to figure it out. Junin Uzumaki wants you to be his apprentice. Usually, it would be hard to set up an apprenticeship so soon after graduating, but since you are in the reserve, it is much easier. Is that right? I hope you'll forgive me, Hokage-sama, but I find that hard to believe. Genin Naruto, please say what's on your mind. We're here to talk about your career. That would be the first thing. You're a busy man, Hokage-sama, with much more important things to do than tell me what to do with my life. I think the shinobi of Konoha no Sato and Hai no Kuni can get help with their futures at the registration offices. You're right, but since Junin Uzumaki hasn't been able to find you for the past week, I thought it would be easier to just have you both here. There's no point in wasting time when you could be getting the training you need. Naruto was quiet for a short while. Well said, Hokage-sama. It's clear why you're our leader here in the Leaf. The next thing we need to talk about is why Junin Uzumaki wants to make me his apprentice. This one was answered by Kushina herself. I know you have a lot of potential and want to help you reach it. He gave the Hokage a quick, raised brow look before answering her. I heard that you haven't been in Konohagakure no Sato for the past 4 years. What do you know about any potential I might have? So far, all of my training has happened while you were gone, so you haven't seen any shinobi art skills I might have. Well, I guess that makes sense, she said, but I've heard a lot about you and would like to work with you. Why should I work for you as an apprentice? What will I get out of it? She is one of the best Junin I have, and she is very skilled. She could teach you a lot. With all due respect to you both, I don't know anything about her skills, and she doesn't know anything about mine. Well, Kushina said as soon as she saw his blade, I could show you how to use that knife. In response, he gave a snort. Thank you, I've been taking lessons, I said. This got Hiruzen's attention. Which one? Azuki Yugo, Hokage-sama. Yes, she is very skilled. This Junin Uzumaki was her sensei when she was on Team 8, Kushina confirmed with a nod. Then I can learn from her anything I could have learned from Junin Uzumaki. The Cage asked, what if Junin Uzumaki didn't teach her everything she knows? In that case, I wouldn't have any reason to think she would teach me everything, and it wouldn't make sense to switch teachers. Hiruzen turned to Kushina and said, I see what you mean, Gen and Naruto. Is there anything else you'd like to say to show that you can help him? The phrase, showing ability, gave her an idea and made her smile. I think I do. I've been teaching Uzumaki Naruto for the past 4 years, so maybe a fight between the two of them would show him what I have to offer as an apprentice. He thought about it for a minute, but couldn't come up with a reason why he shouldn't let it happen. The sparring would be a nice, controlled situation where he could see Naruto's skill for himself. If his sister beat him, he would learn from his mother. If he beat her completely, Kushina wouldn't be able to persuade him to become an apprentice, and the matter would be dropped. Naruto had also acted very professionally during this meeting. Hiruzen was pretty sure he could stay professional while sparring with his sister, so the spar itself didn't worry him too much. Then again, his sister beating him after she took his place on a team would probably make the family even more distant, but he couldn't help it. Now, what mattered was making sure the next generation of shinobi in Konoha got off on the right foot. I don't see why we shouldn't do this. Gen and Naruto, what do you think? I can't think of a better way to find out about her teaching skills, so this should be enough. Then it's decided. Kushina, gather your student and meet us at Training Ground 1. I think they're on a mission right now, so it should be free. I'll give you a half hour from now, make sure she's ready. Yes, Hokage-sama, Kushina said. She left the office right away to look for her daughter. He might be able to teach her soon based on how this spar goes, so she had to make sure Naruto knew how important this was. Naruto, are you ready to go? Hiruzen asked. The boy took a quick look at himself and nodded, which Hiruzen thought was strange because his usual kunai holsters weren't there. He knew that Naruto was proud and usually pretty sure of himself, but going into a fight without all your gear? The boy was way too stupid to do that. I am, Hokage-sama. Alright, let's go. Cat, monkey, you're with me. The two Anbu were right next to him, and it was clear that they were both happy to see this. Naruto followed the other 3 out of the office at a safe distance and, without knowing it, had the same thought as the Sandame. That wasn't so bad, she said. She ran home in less than 5 minutes, but that was a lot longer than she would have liked. She opened the gate and waded through the grass that hadn't been cut yet. Then she ran into the house and straight to the kitchen. Naruto. Luckily, Naruto was right where she thought she would be. She was finishing her breakfast in the kitchen before going to her team meeting. Yes, Ka-san? Are you all set? Yeah, but I don't have to leave for a while, he said. She was confused, and she should have been. Good, finish your food, we have to go. Where to? This morning, I talked to Naruto about becoming my apprentice. Wait, what? Really? What did he say? He doesn't think it would help him in any way. That doesn't make any sense. You taught me, her daughter said. Kushina smiled at her. That's right, and that's why we have to go. You'll show him how much I can teach him. I have to fight Ni-kun. Naruto didn't know what to think when she heard that. She wanted to show him everything she had learned while they were away, but she didn't want to hurt him. She had been trained by a Junin for 4 years, and she had a huge amount of chakra while he was still in school. It wouldn't be fair, but if it could get him to take an apprenticeship, it might be worth it. Don't think of it as a fight, little sunflower. It's a spar. You're going to show him your skills, and he's going to show you his. I heard that one of my old students, Azuki Yugo, has been teaching him how to use a blade, so you might want to grab that tanto I gave you. Oh, so he's trained somewhere else besides the academy? Naruto asked. Even if he hadn't trained as much as she had, at least she wouldn't be fighting a beginner at the academy. She also knew that it probably wasn't a good idea to think too little of her brother. That's right, so don't worry about him. It's better for both of us. What gives? Because now we can show him that I'm not only a good teacher, but a better teacher than my old student. Then we'll be able to hang out with him, right? Sure. I'll bring him back here for dinner as soon as I can. Just dinner. Well, I'll invite him to live in the compound again, but you know he's renting an apartment right now. If he's happy taking care of himself, we should let him. But that doesn't mean we won't visit him whenever we can, Naruto said with a bright smile that quickly faded. Did you figure out why he seems so angry? I knew he wouldn't be happy about us leaving, but I thought he'd be glad to see us back. Kushina frowned. The way Sandame talked to her son told her there was something going on, but she didn't know what it was yet. Kurenai hadn't said anything, she hadn't seen Tsunade, Hiruzen hadn't told her anything, and the only thing she knew about Kakashi at the moment was that, according to her daughter, he was still reading that smut and being lazy. She couldn't be sure that they all knew what was wrong, but she had a good feeling that Hiruzen knew the most. If he didn't want to tell her, why not? Fine. She would just have to ask her son. Or she would as soon as she had him working for her as an apprentice. Since that should have been taken care of this morning, they could talk about it over lunch so she could find out what she missed while she was gone. Then, of course, she'd have to drag him back here so he could talk to his sister and get the gifts they'd gotten along the way. I don't know, but I'm going to find out and make it all better, he said. Her mind immediately went back to the calm, professional way he had talked to her before. She knew it was a formal setting, but it hurt her more than she could say that he acted like he didn't know who she was, especially since she knew he remembered her. Their meeting the day before was enough proof of that. The only difference was that he had shown anger there, even if it had been very restrained, but there had been nothing in the Hokage's office before. She could handle anger, but why did he show no interest in her, as if she had nothing to do with his life? What was wrong with her baby? He knew Kushina and her daughter were coming, but he still watched with interest as Naruto put the kunai holsters on his legs. He was sure that he hadn't had them in his office, but here he was with 2 very good ones. He couldn't have taken them from another shinobi because the quality was too high for anyone who didn't know how to spot the boy. But where else could he have gotten them? He had been following the cage and his guards, so someone could have given them to him, but they would have had to know that Naruto was about to need them. It made his suspicions that Naruto had something to do with the mysterious wolves even stronger, but it also made him very worried. How did they get close enough to him to hand him the gear when everyone had moved out of the way for him and Naruto wasn't that far behind? It was not a nice thing to think about, but it was likely that he was overthinking things. As a shinobi, it was part of the job to think too much about things. If you missed even one result, that result was going to happen anyway. As an example, he sent Naruto to TNI. He didn't think that clan members who had gotten away would tell people who weren't Uchiha what had happened, but that's what happened. He didn't expect to lose Naruto's trust when he was trying to get information, but that's what happened. He didn't think Naruto would be friends with an unknown group or go to war with the Yamanaka, but both of those things happened. When he really thought about it, most of the mistakes he had made recently were because of Naruto. He might have been getting old. He really needs to be done with work. A quick glance at Kushina showed that she was quietly talking to her daughter, probably giving her some last words of support before the fight. The Uzumaki family had a lot riding on this, it's true. On the other hand, Naruto didn't care about this fight at all. Whether he won or lost, that was it. No matter what, whether or not he became Kushina's apprentice would depend on how well Naruto could show him what her mother had taught her. The goal wasn't to win, just like the last test of the Chunin exams. She moved away from her daughter and gave her a tanto, which made the Hokage raise an eyebrow. Naruto had been practicing using his blade with Yugo, but he didn't know how much training Naruto had gotten while they were traveling. As far as he knew, they were trying to learn basic shinobi skills and how to use the Kyuubi's chakra. Though, given how much Kushina loved her sword, he probably should have thought she would have been taught how to use some kind of weapon. He took his eyes off the two women and back to Naruto, who was still and waiting with his arms crossed over his chest. He looked up when someone tapped him on the shoulder, and when Kat looked from him to Naruto, he nodded at her. She moved quickly toward him, then took off her arm guards and gave them to her student. He put them on his arms without saying a word. She looked at his chest and then at the standard issue Anbu armor she was wearing. She probably thought about lending him that too, but she shook her head and put out her hand instead. When Naruto pulled out his blade and gave it to her, Hiruzen and the others were surprised and confused. At first glance, it was clear that this was not an ordinary blade. No, this was not something that most shinobi would ever be able to use, and he didn't think it was likely that a samurai would have such a blade. As soon as she had the blade in her hand, she grabbed her own tanto and gave it to him. Hiruzen understood that she just didn't want him to use such a beautiful blade in a spar, and Kushina was probably thinking the same thing, but Naruto didn't seem to get it. Is his blade broken in some way? No, Kat said in a flat tone. He shouldn't use it against a shinobi of the leaf, though. Naruto cocked her head and asked, why? I'm sure my tanto can handle it. After all, it was made by Uzumaki. It doesn't matter how well the blades are made, it's the blade itself that matters. He shouldn't use Marie's tooth against a friend. Naruto had no idea what to do, but Hiruzen knew that this blade had a history. Even though it wasn't one of the legendary weapons that most older warriors knew by heart, Kushina's shocked gasp showed that it was well known among blade users. Well, either that or it was an Uzumaki-made blade with a name. Either was just as likely. Marie's tooth? Where on earth did he get that blade? Asked Kushina, her eyes never leaving the pitch-black blade, whose silver edge glistened in the sunlight. Kat just gave a shrug. I don't know, and he won't tell me, Naruto agreed. Why can't he use this tooth against me? What's the big deal with it? It's not so much the blade as the story behind it. Legend has it that it was made by a demon to fight him if he got out of prison, but the first blood it tasted was that of the priestesses who blessed it. So it's a lucky sword then? No, not at all. It's very cursed and the person who uses it leaves a trail of dead bodies behind them. Then why is it such a big deal to use it in a fight? The blade isn't made for safe fighting. Its only purpose is to kill those it goes up against. If you fight with it, you're telling your opponent you want to kill them, and if they spare you, it means your life wasn't worth ending. Some people are willing to spar with legendary blades, but no one fights with Marie's tooth. But he was going to use it until she stopped him, she said. That made Kushina stop in her tracks. After a while, she was able to answer. I guess that means he took you seriously. Be careful, though, because we don't know how he fights, and it would be embarrassing for you to lose because of a mistake you made. Don't worry, Ka-san. I'll make you proud. Hiruzen looked at the two groups and decided they were as ready as they were going to get. Kushina, Kat, please move away, he told them. Both women walked over to him and stared at the two young shinobi. Is everyone ready? You bet, Gigi. I am, Hokage-sama. Then start, he said, and Naruto ran forward to show what she could do before he was done. Naruto, on the other hand, remained stationary, casting quick glances around the training ground and the surrounding forest. Her first strike lashed out just as she was in range only to be blocked by his tanto. Strangely, he didn't do anything to move the blade out of the way or strike back. He stopped the blade by putting it in the way it was going and let her try again. 2 strikes, 5 strikes, and 7 strikes were all blocked. It was almost like he didn't want to be there. But with each block, he moved backwards, giving her time to get her bearings and try again. Kushina was puzzled by this strange behavior, but Kat, who had worked with him for many hours, seemed to understand what he was trying to do. Hiruzen seemed to think the same way as Kushina, since both of them were looking forward to a real Kenjutsu match. Isn't that what Naruto had hoped for? What was he doing? I'm sorry, ladies, but I don't know much about sword fighting. This, on the other hand, seems very strange. Is he trying to tire her out or see how she fights? Kat gave a quick snort. I know you can see how clearly she telegraphs her moves, Hokage-sama. Some might think it's chaotic, but she's just following the flow of her previous moves. I'm sure Naruto can see it just as easily. Kushina rubbed the back of her head because she was a little embarrassed. I've taught her a fair amount, and she's gotten pretty good at it, but I'm still trying to teach her to hide her movements. It seems like she's not even trying to hide them this match, either because she's too confident or too excited to realize she's not doing it. Seems pretty happy to me, said Hiruzen. But does that mean he's just trying to wear her out? I know you Uzumaki have a lot of stamina, so it would take a while, but she seems ready to keep swinging her blade until she falls. That sounds like something she would do, Kushina said. That's not his plan, because it would make the fight go on for too long. Against a good swordsman, it could take hours, but against an Uzumaki, we could be here all day. The Cage asked. Then what could he be up to? Of all of us, you probably know him the best, said Kushina. Why doesn't he go after us? Like Uzumaki-san said, her daughter is decent with a blade, even if she is telegraphing a lot of moves. He knows he can block them, but if he were to try attacking, she may be able to get a hit in herself. He isn't willing to risk it. Wouldn't that make the fight last even longer? Yes, Hokage-sama, it would if he planned to keep going all day. Well, he had better hurry, Kushina said. That tree line is coming up fast. Hidden behind her mask, Kat smiled. Oh, I'm sure he knows. Before they could ask, Naruto moved. As Naruto's upward slash was blocked and she brought it back down, he turned his tanto around and moved into her strike. His blade met hers, but this time, unlike the last few dozen times, he kept moving. His right arm continued to cross his body, bringing Naruto's tanto with it, and his whole body moved with it. With a twist, his left leg came around from behind and landed solidly on her head. Naruto looked a little dazed, but he didn't wait a second longer. He ran away into the forest nearby. What? Kushina didn't get it at all. He had such a good chance, so why hadn't he taken it? Hiruzen was also confused, but he could almost feel Kat's arrogance rolling over him. Do you want to know? He asked. You both made one terrible mistake while watching the fight, she said. Behind her mask, they could see that she was smiling. You thought this was a kenjutsu match. I thought that what Naruto wanted was a kenjutsu match. No, Hokage-sama. He wanted to see how well Naruto had been taught and how well it fit with his own style. Style? We only saw him block, he didn't have any style, said Kushina as she watched Naruto get up and run in after her brother. And that's the mistake. You think he's a kenjutsu user, so you expect him to fight in a certain way, but he's not a kenjutsu user. What is he then? He asked, but he already knew what the answer would be. As soon as he stopped thinking about this as a kenjutsu match, everything made sense. He is a shinobi. Hiruzen said. He lured her into his territory. He knows he doesn't stand a chance in a fair fight, so he changes the rules to give himself the upper hand, Hiruzen said. Yes, Hokage-sama, you were right. He tries not to attack in the open, which is why he fought until the very end. We both know how good he is at sneaking up on people, though, and he's about to tear her apart. Hiruzen gave a quiet curse. Monkey, get my crystal ball. We need to figure out what's going on. Yes, Hokage-sama, he whispered, and he was gone. Cat. How likely is it that he will play with his food? Excellent, Hokage-sama. The fight was to see how good she was, and he's likely to go easy on her so she can prove herself. Good, I'd rather not call an ambulance. Even so, Hokage-sama, you might want to call one. All it takes is one bad strike. He thought, I guess you're right, and he didn't pay attention to Kushina's worried look. Naruto will be alright, won't she? Should be, said Kat with a shrug. But there's no doubt that by the time he's done with her, she'll be pretty beat up. I'm willing to bet that he stayed near the edge of the forest and followed her deeper in. Like a predator, was what Kushina said. Like a wolf. There were too many similarities and too many coincidences for it not to be true, but Hiruzen wasn't sure if that was a bad thing or not. A few tense minutes later, Monkey came back with the crystal ball in one hand and a small table in the other. He set both down and stepped back, letting the three people sit around the ball. Even though Kat was there as a guard, no one asked her to leave because she was sitting with them. Kat and the Hokage were mostly right about what they saw, but Kushina let out a startled gasp. Having chosen to focus the crystal ball on Naruto, the others saw the confused girl as Naruto dashed out from between the trees and cut at her with his tanto. To her credit, she deflected a fourth of the blows, but Naruto never stopped attacking her. Kushina was relieved that there was no blood. Yet, no blood had come from any of his cuts, and everyone watching was sure it was by choice and not a lack of skill. Her clothes, on the other hand, had seen better days. While he avoided hitting her skirt probably for her own good, he didn't hesitate to rip her top to shreds. With each cut, it became more and more useless until, with a final cut, it could no longer stay on her body. In a very kunoichi way, Naruto didn't care about not having a top and didn't try to cover her bound chest. Instead, she stayed on guard for more attacks. Naruto stopped moving to watch her and was surprised by how she reacted to not having a top. He gave her a quick nod of acknowledgement before disappearing back into the forest. While Kushina was proud of her daughter for staying focused on the fight, Kat and Hiruzen were both surprised that the bindings were still in great shape even though he had cut off the cloth that had been covering them. The Sandaime Hokage was impressed by his speed and accuracy. Naruto hadn't been using his blade for that long, and Yugo worked a lot as his guard, so for the young shinobi to show such skill was amazing. He doesn't use his time to learn how to fight with blades, so all of it is spent getting faster and better. He can block attacks with little effort because he moves so precisely, and he is fast enough to stop any blades that come at him. He doesn't bother trying to attack because he's not very good at it in the open. As you can see, if he has a chance to hide, he can attack quite well. Yes. Agreed Hiruzen. How very shinobi-like. It's rare to see a genin who doesn't care about flashy jutsu and strong techniques. It's just not his style, Hokage-sama, she said, turning to Kushina. It looks like Naruto's style, though. How come she hasn't used any jutsu? I'd like to say it's because it's dangerous to use them in a place as small as those dense woods, but I think it's more likely that he hasn't used any yet. He's using a sword, so she'll use a sword, too. I think she thinks it's honorable, the woman said. Yes, said the Sandaime, but being honorable won't help you once you leave Konoha. Even with their flashy jutsu, most of the shinobi from other villages are much closer to being real shinobi than those from our village. I know, and I hope she knows, too. Thank goodness. This is Konoha, Kat said with a snort. What's funny? Yes, this is Konoha, but what I said before still stands. He is a shinobi. He doesn't care about honor, only about winning. I know you're probably closer to him than the two of us, Kushina said, still not sure if the jab was meant or not. But I find that hard to believe. He is polite and respectful most of the time. Even if it's not what we might think of as a code of honor, he seems to have his own. Not honor, Hokage-sama. Only behavior. His behavior reminds me of the clans, but it's important to remember that not all clans were shinobi in the past. So, even though the way he acts might make him seem honorable, he is anything but. I see what you mean. In what ways does he lack honor? I haven't seen anything he's done that makes me think he's being dishonest. During this game. So far, nothing. It might be the end of it. In the matches I've had with him, though, he tends to cheat quite often. Would you mind giving some examples? As you can see in this match, he will sometimes try to distract his opponent by grabbing their clothes with his hands or his sword. He might have someone else nearby to help him, or he might put explosive notes on you before the match. He has buried those tags on the training field the day before a match so that he can use them during the game. He just doesn't play fair because he doesn't like the chances of losing. He's a genin sparring with someone better than him, so why is losing such a big deal? Was Kushina's question. Because losing in the field means dying, was Kat's direct and grim answer. He takes this very seriously, and it's important to keep that in mind. Kids these days don't know what they're getting into when they join the academy, but he does, and I think he longs for it. What? Kushina was the one who said it, but Hiruzen had the same thought. Can you think of anything else for him to do? He was born into the world of shinobi. He knows what it's like and what he'll have to see and do, but he's okay with it. He would be a shinobi even if he never went to the academy. It's sad, but from what I've seen, it seems to be true. But I think he'll be a good shinobi once he's had some experience. Hiruzen agreed before turning to Kushina and saying, your daughter also seems to be doing well. There aren't many young kunoichi who could keep going without their top. Thank you, Hokage-sama. I've done everything I can to get her ready for this way of life. Kat gave a sad shake of her head. She might have the skill and the ability, but she'll never be ready for this way of life. It doesn't fit with who she is. Before a fight could start, Hiruzen said something. Then it's good that the shinobi world has changed so much over the years, because I think she'll fit right in with the new generation. A rather grumpy Kat stole the last word on the subject. We don't need to worry about this generation. After saying this, the three of them turned back to the crystal ball in time to see Naruto's last attack break Naruto's bonds. This was the expected result. Kya. They could hear her even from where they were sitting. It was one thing for her to stay on task when her top was off, but it was a whole other thing for her to stay on task when her chest was completely exposed. She put her hands up to cover herself, which caused her tanto to fall to the ground. Hiruzen thought, "I guess that's the end of this," and Kat nodded next to him. "Maybe," said a worried Kushina. "It might turn out to be the start of something." Before they could ask, Naruto jumped back as fast as he could when 4 gold chains appeared on Naruto's back and she lashed out. In an instant, Naruto's advantage was turned against him. He couldn't move around in the forest, and he couldn't keep track of all 4 chains as they wrapped around trees, so he had to leave. He used trees to launch himself away from the new threat, but while he was able to avoid the chains, the trees he used were not so lucky, and the solidified chakra killed them. When he raised his arms to block the wood splinters coming at him, he was glad to be wearing Kat's arm guards. However, the rest of his body wasn't as lucky as his face, which he had been able to protect. With one last tree, he cleared the surrounding forests and made it back to training ground number 1. Even though he was bleeding from the many splinters that had pierced his skin like wooden senbon, he kept moving to get away from his sister. It wasn't long before an embarrassed and angry blonde showed up at the end of the tree line, but she didn't move. Only her left hand was now covering her chest. Her dropped tanto was dangling from her right hand's fingers, but she didn't look like she wanted to keep doing kenjutsu. All 4 of her chains were wrapped around a nearby tree, and with a strong pull, the tree fell over. Before he got treatment for chakra withdrawal, he had torn up training grounds enough to know what would happen next. He didn't feel let down. Naruto was able to roll away from where the tree was going to hit him, but he was too close to avoid the shower of wood that followed. This time, the pieces of wood that were stuck in his skin were much bigger. He took a second to look at his wounds with a grimace. It didn't look good. If he was lucky, he might be able to take 2 more rounds of those splinters before he was done. He wasn't going to let trees beat him. He pushed himself back and deeper into the training ground, bleeding steadily, hoping that she would be forced to leave the tree line. It was still possible that she could throw her chosen projectiles to the other end of the field, but it made it easier for him to avoid them. Realizing this, or maybe just being angry, she moved toward him. At first, she moved slowly, but soon she was sprinting toward him with her right hand tightly gripping her tanto in a reverse grip and 4 golden chains whipping around her. When she was still a good distance away, she sent the chakra constructs in front of her, but Naruto easily dodged them. With a swipe of his tanto, he cut them and they started to disappear. Kushina and Naruto were a little surprised that he was able to cut the chains, but the slightly glowing tanto in his hand told them everything they needed to know. It wasn't chakra metal, but even regular weapons could be coated in chakra. It was difficult, though, and not what most people did when facing the fast attacks of chakra chains. He didn't seem surprised by the result either. It was as if he knew how to deal with chains before he even saw them. Kushina was still surprised, but Naruto didn't seem to care. Kushina's sister, on the other hand, was angry when her chains were cut. By forcing more chakra through the chains that were already there, she kept them from falling apart and brought them back to defend her. She looked at her brother and then used up all of her energy. A wave of chains burst from her back. There were probably hundreds of them, and they quickly rose up like the angry fist of a god ready to smash its enemies. Naruto was angry at what he saw. He had gone to great lengths to make sure she wouldn't get hurt in this fight so she could go to her team meeting, and she had responded by drawing blood and now using an Uzumaki technique against him. As far as she and her mother knew, he didn't know how to use the chakra chains, so this was done to crush him and end the fight. Fine. If she wanted to play like that, he would show her how to do it right. When he threw his tanto to the side, people thought for a second that he might be giving up. He quickly showed them that they were wrong. Putting one open hand on top of the other, he quickly knelt down and slammed his hands on the ground, almost as if he were calling something. When he looked up, he saw his sister's purple eyes, which were burning with anger, and with one last snarl, his own chains appeared. In an explosion of soil, they came out from under her and quickly wrapped themselves around her chains. These chains had nothing in common with hers. They were as dark as the night and blocked out the light of the morning sun. Each link was so close together that it looked more like a tendril of ink than anything else. His chains were easier to move than the golden ones she sent forward, but they stopped in the middle for no reason of her own. She tried to send them forward by gritting her teeth, but they wouldn't even move. A quick look showed that the black tendrils were completely wrapped around the links of her chains. At her brother's command, his chains tightened with enough force to break hers completely. She couldn't help but look up in shock as her chains vanished, taking her remaining chakra with them. His chains didn't add up to more than a dozen, but she had lost all of hers. With wide eyes, she turned to look at the person who had destroyed one of her best moves, and that's when she saw the blood. First, she was scared, then she felt bad because she hadn't meant to hurt him, even though she thought he deserved it for taking off her top and chest bindings. There was one more part, though. It was a small black seed that grew as she thought about how he had stopped her while she was hurt with what seemed like very little effort. The more she thought about it, the bigger that seed got, until anger started to choke her heart and cloud her mind. She had trained with her mother, who was the last known user of those chains, for 4 years, but he was able to stop her without that training. During this match, she wanted to show him everything she had learned, to impress him and make her mother proud, but he was able to stop her. As he got up from his crouch, the black chains around him tightened into a protective layer that stopped the wood splinters from moving. Naruto's mother had never even mentioned that was a possibility, so when a quick look at her mother, who was being held back by the Hokage and cat, showed that she was just as shocked, Naruto knew for sure that her brother was much better at the technique than she was. And that made her even more angry. She knew she was out of chakra and gritted her teeth, but that didn't mean she didn't have other ways to get it. She dug deep into herself until she found it. A burning pulse like the sun's heartbeat. Without thinking, she grabbed it and pulled it out. Immediately, her body was flooded with molten chakra that gave her more power than anything else could. Red wisps of chakra escaped her body and rose into the air like tongues of fire. No one would have been confused about what she was doing. As her eyes turned red and her teeth seemed to grow longer, she let out a wild growl. She no longer cared about things like being polite, so she dropped her arm to her side and let her nails sharpen into claws. It wouldn't last. With a scream of pain, it was gone as quickly as it had come, leaving her to writhe in pain on the ground as her skin seemed to steam and blood dripped from her mouth as she was attacked by an invisible enemy. Naruto moved toward her to find out what was wrong, but as he got closer, he saw that her erratic movements and painful screams were getting louder. When he stepped back, they quieted down a bit, and he was left to think about it as Kushina ran to her daughter's side. It only took him a moment to figure it out. Taking a careful look at his sister, he saw that Mito was there, not more than 20 yards away, and was reacting to his presence. Her words came back to him out of the blue and made him turn away. He shouldn't have thought she was gone for good. She was here now, and it was clear she wasn't too happy about it. He got his tanto and met the people coming to help Naruto. He gave them the blade and the arm guards without saying a word and took Marie's tooth with a nod of thanks. When he turned to the Hokage, he snapped into the Konoha salute even though he was still bleeding. Hokage-sama. Have no fear, Naruto. Have you made your decision? Yes, Hokage-sama. Kushina seems to be a good teacher, but I don't think what she could teach me would fit with my way of doing things. I get it, and I'll tell her. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to find a doctor. In response, the Hokage raised a hand. Cat. You're done for the day. Please help Naruto for the rest of it. She gave a quick salute and then moved toward Naruto. She told him, come on, I can heal your wounds. Is everything okay at your place? It is closer than mine. Should be, he said with a painful shrug as they left. I'm pretty sure Anko sleeps later than Mai, but even she should be up by now. Naruto didn't even notice when Hiruzen and Monkey gave him shocked looks. Hiruzen shook his head and looked back to see Kushina helping Naruto, who had stopped flailing around. He looked up at the sky and saw where the sun was, then snorted and shook his head again. Is there something wrong, Hokage-sama? Asked Monkey. He also shook his head at what Hiruzen said. We haven't even eaten lunch yet. As the last piece of flesh was pulled from his body, he let out a hiss. As soon as it was gone, she put a wet cloth on the wound to soak up any blood and then reached for a bandage that was close by. She quickly switched the cloth for the bandage and put the tape on it right away. She smiled and said, there. That should be enough. You probably won't be fully better for a while, but since you're on the reserves, it shouldn't be too hard. He replied by muttering, Uzumaki blood. Oh, I forgot about that. Okay, give it a few days. If they start bleeding heavily, you should find a trained medical professional. Will do, Yugo-sensei. She sat down next to him on the couch and said with a sigh, now you're a shinobi. Please call me senpai instead. Okay, he said after a short pause. You do know that my blood is still all over the couch, right, senpai? She just shrugged her shoulders. I'm going to do laundry soon, so it won't matter. Really? His eyebrows raised. How does it come out? It doesn't matter, because I already threw away your clothes. Because I don't want to throw the couch out. I'm sorry, I can't say. It's an Anbu secret. He just looked at her for a while. I don't believe that, he said. She shrugged again. Maybe, I guess the only way to find out is to make Anbu. Are you really trying to change my career choice by telling me how to get rid of stains? I thought it wouldn't hurt to give it a shot. He laughed and shook his head. This wasn't the first time she had tried to get him to aim for Anbu. It was the first time she tried something so stupid to get his attention, though. After a few minutes of peace and quiet, Naruto broke the silence. So, now that you're done for the day, senpai, do you have any plans? Oh, Kohai, did you want to ask me out for the evening? No, but if you want, I'm sure I could work that in. Hayate is off today, so I'll probably spend some time with him later or maybe some other time. I'll remember that. If you want, senpai, you can go home. I won't tell Hokage-sama. Thanks, Naruto, but I think I'll wait a bit before leaving. You gave me the rest of the day to spend with Hayate, so the least I can do is wait until after lunch to leave. Well, if that's the case, feel free to help yourself to whatever food I have in my kitchen. She looked at him with an interested brow raised. You talk like you won't be here, he said. I could, he agreed, if I get things taken care of quickly enough. What kinds of stuff? Genin Hyuga wants to talk to me about a problem that they've been having. Who is it? That made him pause for a moment. Oh, yes, I forgot that she had a cousin who was also a genin. Hyuga Hinata asked me to help. She should be at a team meeting right now, shouldn't she? So? She looked at him for a second, then shrugged again. I don't really care if you can pull her away from Kurenai or not. What kind of help did she need? Religious. She looked at him with doubt when he said, religious? Don't ask. It seems like clans, like shinobi, get more strange as they age. I see, the Anbu nodded. Leaving soon? Yeah, I'm going to wash off the rest of the blood and get some clothes, and then I'm leaving. She stood up and said, I'll help. It's okay, I can do it, he told her, and she left. Or, he tried to, but she didn't let him. She pointed to the towel on his lap and said, you can't take a shower with those bandages on, so how do you think you can wash yourself? As long as you keep that on, I've seen all I can of you today. I guess you're right, he said with a sigh as he stood up and wrapped the towel around his waist. One day you'll realize I'm always right, she said as she put her hand on his shoulder and led him to the bathroom. He smiled and said, I'll have to remember that. Thank you, senpai, for doing this. She smiled in return. Don't mention it, Kohai. She cautiously knocked on the door and tried not to notice that she felt like she was being watched. Cat, who seemed close to him, and Monkey both seemed to like him a lot. She wouldn't be surprised if more Anbu felt the same way and started watching over his apartment on their own. Not the person she wanted to see, but the person who was most likely to let her come in and talk to him, answered the door quickly. Oh, Yugo, it's been a long time, she said, but she didn't mention that she had just seen Cat. Personal identities and Anbu identities didn't often mix. Still, with hair like that, it was almost certain that people would know. Is Naruto available? Her old student shook her head. He just left, Kushina. The way he said it made her think of how coldly professional her son had been with her that morning, and her chest tightened at the thought of her oldest child. You left? He was hurt. You were supposed to take care of him for the rest of the day, Hiruzen told her after she calmed down her daughter. As soon as she heard, she took her daughter home and ran straight to her son's apartment. Yugo's eyes had gotten a little narrower as he said, he's not doing anything hard. I'm just going to see a friend who asked for help. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Do you know where he went? I do, was all she said. After an awkward pause, Kushina realized that her former student wasn't going to say anything else. Do you know where? I can. Will you? When Kushina heard no, her shoulders sagged. Oh, I see. When will he return? He wants to do it around lunchtime. I guess I'll try again this afternoon, the sad mother said as she was about to walk away. Yugo, aren't you close to my son? I would say so, since I had to cut off his clothes and help him wash earlier. Kushina hesitated briefly before making up her mind. Could you explain what's wrong? Yugo's eyebrows went up in question. Pardon? It's Naruto. I know something must have happened while I was gone, but no one is coming out and telling me what it is. I was going to ask him today over lunch after he became my apprentice, but Hiruzen told me that he turned down my offer. Yugo admitted, I don't blame them for not wanting to be the ones to tell you. Is that the reason you came now? I was going to offer to teach him Fuinjutsu. It's not often used in battle, and I'm not sure what use he'd get out of it in his career, but it's always been passed down among the Uzumaki, and I thought he might like to learn. Then you could ask him during one of his lessons, she said, giving a quick glance back before turning away. Kushina, why don't you come in? We can talk in the kitchen. Kushina walked in, but stopped at the door to the living room and stared in horror at the broken couch. Yugo moved to stand next to her as he closed the front door. She told the mother, the couch looks a lot worse than he does. She said this to make the mother stop worrying. It made sense that someone would be worried about how dirty the piece of furniture was. I could only work on one wound at a time, so the others kept bleeding until the end. I have to say, your Uzumaki blood is pretty tough. I couldn't get any of it out and am starting to worry about my uniform. Kushina's eyes moved from the couch to the bloody bandages lying around it. The woman explained, most of that was me trying to clean the couch, and only a few were from Naruto. I was about to give up and clean up the mess when you came. Kushina said, I see, as she was led into the kitchen. As soon as the mother sat down, Yugo got to work making tea. So, the Anbu agent began. You said something was wrong. What do you know about Naruto in the last 4 years? Binny's going to the academy, she said. The shame was clear. The compound turned him down. Yes, then what? Kushina kept her eyes fixed on the table in front of her. That's it, that's all I know, she said in a choked whisper that was almost a sob, and Yugo had to hold back a disappointed sigh. We aren't that close, so I can't say I know everything that happened to him, but it's clear I know a lot more than you do. Kushina flinched at that, as she was once again reminded that she was no longer the most important person in her son's life. Anything helps, Kushina said in a soft voice. All I need to know is what's wrong so I can start fixing it. Yugo nodded to show she understood as she put the tea on the table. I'll tell you what I know. Is there anything in particular you'd like to hear about first, or should I start from the beginning? Kushina's first thought was to ask what happened, but then she thought of Tsunade and Kurenai. Had they really helped her child over time? She was going to ask about that when she remembered the meeting in the Hokage's office just that morning. Hiruzen calls my son Genin Naruto instead of Genin Uzumaki. I don't think this is because his sister is also a Genin Uzumaki. No, because only one Genin Uzumaki exists. Wait, Naruto and Naruto both finished school and are now Genin Uzumaki. Yugo let out a deep sigh. No wonder everyone had tried their hardest not to tell Kushina about her son's life over the past few years. This wasn't going to be easy. There is no Uzumaki Naruto. Genin Naruto gave up the Uzumaki name in front of clan heir witnesses more than a year ago. Kushina's whole world fell apart. As he walked through the woods next to the training grounds, he couldn't help but think it was a nice morning. He was pretty calm on his way to training ground 8, but he was still on the lookout for any stray kunai or, less often, jutsu that might come his way. Since it was training ground number 8, it was close to the village, so it was unlikely that someone would be using jutsu in a field nearby. Almost every team training in these fields were genin, and while he had seen the team with Hinata's cousin and almost got hit by a kunai thrown by his bun-haired teammate, none of the other teams he passed seemed to be doing as much training at this point. Normally, it didn't take long to get from his apartment to training ground 8, but Yugo had told him to take it easy, and the threat of her putting senbon into any wound he carelessly reopened kept him moving at a painfully slow pace. He didn't want to date her. So, he took a slow stroll to meet the woman who used to be the heiress of the Hyuga family and, if what he had heard was true, the new goddess of the branch family. It was a very interesting turn of events. When he got to where he was going, he wasn't surprised to see 3 new genin sitting in the grass while their teacher talked to them. They could be talking about anything, but since the group just got together, they were probably talking about training plans and how the team works together. He was surprised, though, to see Anko trying very hard not to fall asleep while her friend talked. Even though he couldn't really blame the Inuzuka, it looked like he was having the same problems. The genjutsu had a nice voice, and if you listened to anything she said, you would probably fall asleep. That could be a big problem, since Yuhi Kurenai didn't like being ignored. He was lucky that Naruto showed up and saved him, at least until Naruto left. As he walked toward the group, he briefly wished he had his cane with him. Even though a cane could be seen as a sign of weakness, it also gave him a sense of nobility that helped hide the many bandages that could be seen through his loose red robes. Even though Yugo kept pushing the idea on him, he was against it at first. In the end, she decided that he didn't really need it. He should really remember that she was right all the time. So, without a cane, he went on. Anko was the first one to notice that her friend was there. She had been looking everywhere but at her friend for something to keep her awake. She quickly got up from the grass and waved at him with a big smile. The childish Tokubetsu Junin yelled, "Naruto!" This got the attention of the others, who quickly turned to see what the woman was so excited about. Hinata agreed with the woman and said, "Naruto," with relief in her voice. Hinata was waiting for him to get there, but Anko had other plans and ran over to greet him. She stopped hugging him when he pointed to the bandages, and the two of them walked back to the rest of the group with small smiles on their faces. Kurenai said, "Good morning, Naruto," with a smile of her own. It was always fun to see how they got along with each other. "Why did you come here?" "Good morning to you, too, Junin Yuhi. I was hoping to borrow Genin Hyuga for a minute." "Just a moment?" "Yes, you're right. I did need to talk to her about something." She thought for a moment before looking at Hinata and her pleading eyes. She must have known this would happen. "Okay, but only this one time. I'm grateful to you, Junin Yuhi." Hinata's answer wasn't even close to as quiet. "Thanks, Kurenai-sensei." Hinata was given a break for now, so the two of them walked to the edge of the field, far enough from the Inuzuka that they wouldn't be heard. They didn't have to worry about that, though, because Anko had taken it upon herself to distract him with some impromptu evasion training. She was always happy when she saw Naruto and was reminded of how free she was. "So you got my letter, right?" I asked. He nodded. "I did." She asked nervously, "Well, what do you think?" She really hoped that this would help. "I think your family has more problems than I thought at first. But this is useful, right?" He gave her a smirk. "Yes, I can, Hinata. You've done a great job." She started putting her fingers together in a shy way. After she met him, she did that a lot less, but that nervous habit still showed up every now and then. "I didn't do anything at all. You told me about this, and that was all I wanted." "Oh, okay. Now, tell me, do they know about the wolves?" I asked. "That night, 2 of them were found, and someone said the wolves protect the goddess." "Yes, I see. What else?" The 2, well, they bowed to me," she said. As their leader, she didn't know how he would feel about that, but she hoped he wouldn't be too mad at her. "Okay. That should make things easier for everyone in the Hyuga compound." "Eh? You're not mad, are you?" He just raised an eyebrow. "No, I shouldn't, it's just that they bowed to me as if they were mine before everyone else," I thought. He put his hand out to stop her. "It's fine. They can serve you, but don't forget that they're doing it at my order." "I won't forget," she said after a moment of hesitation. Then she spoke with a little more confidence. "I'm also at your service." She wasn't sure if the smile she got after making such a statement was proud, but it was the closest thing she had ever seen to pride that was shown toward her. "That's good to hear, Hinata no Makoto," he said, as if he hadn't noticed that her face was red as a tomato. "Find a place among them, and don't be afraid to ask one of your guards or me for advice. Just remember that the pack is here for you, and we will help you." I get it. Is there anything you want me to work toward?" He shook his head. "Not yet. Keep making them love you and make sure they don't find out about me. This will cause some changes among the wolves, but that's probably for the best. In time, I may be able to bring some of them into the wolves to protect you more, but right now there's too much going on." He stopped. "On second thought, see what you can do about the Yamanaka. I've had my wolves back off, but until public opinion changes and they start getting back on their feet I won't be able to do anything else with the clans of Konoha. Make something up about wanting to help them in your benevolence or something. You might not hold the sway of the Hyuga heiress anymore, but if enough Hyuga are seen with friendly relations towards the Mindwalkers it will be done." She seemed to think for a moment about what to say next, but in the end, she just said it. "Naruto-sama." He smiled at her like a wolf. "I know it will, Hinata no Makoto. Now go back to your team." She did that with a soft smile on her face. When her apprentice walked in with a frown, she was sitting at her desk. She didn't care about the way her dead lover's niece's lips turned down, though. "Did you get it?" She couldn't hide how excited she was about the chance to make things right. "Some of it is locked, but I was able to get his medical records. She gave the older woman a single, disappointingly thin folder. Is that all? That couldn't be true. She didn't want Naruto to put his pain in the folder, but she was sure there would be more proof. He was now a shinobi. By this point, most of the students had at least a long list of injuries from training accidents, since the academy kept track of all injuries, no matter how minor. Yes, that's everything they have. A birth certificate, vaccinations, 8 years of annual checkups, a few accidents at home, and what I think is the reason Kushina wanted you to come back. She didn't say more because Tsunade had the official report, or at least a copy of it, in her hands right now. It would tell her more than she could on her own. Thanks, Shizune. I'm sure I can start fixing things with this. Her apprentice didn't say anything about her doubts, but her face said a lot. Luckily, Tsunade had already gone back to her desk and started looking through the folder. I'll probably spend the rest of the day in the village. Is there anything I can get for you on my way back? No, I'll be fine. Go have fun. She said it in a half-mumbled way because she was concentrating on the papers in front of her, but Shizune heard it just fine. Shizune left the Senju compound right away. She didn't want to take a chance that Tsunade would change her mind, especially after reading the latest news. She would definitely not come back until late that night. Tsunade was too busy looking through her godson's medical records to notice when Shizune ran away. As she said, it started out just as she would have expected for the first 8 years, until just before he started at the academy. In a very strange report, a man named Yakushi Kabuto said that he was worried that Naruto was born to a Jinchuriki. This had never happened before, and unlike his sister, he didn't have the Kyuubi inside him to help his body adjust to the chakra. She could see why Kushina had been worried, but it was clear that she had gone too far. Even if the Kyuubi's chakra was bad for her son, she should have stayed because she didn't know if it was the other way around. The next report was about Naruto being turned away by the Uzumaki compound, and when she read about the burns, she winced. Bijuu's chakra was really bad and didn't work well with humans. He did, however, seem to get better quickly, which the doctor thought might be because traces of the Kyuubi's chakra sped up his Uzumaki healing. No one could deny the power of a Bijuu's chakra, even though it was dangerous. It looks like his body, which was clearly affected by his Uzumaki blood, took advantage of that energy and used it to heal itself and the damage it was doing by using that energy. She thought, though, that if he had any more leftover chakra in him, he would probably hurt his body more than it could ever be able to heal on its own. If that was true and no one told the doctors, he probably would have died within a week. She shivered when she thought about it. Her godson would have been dead, and since she was a doctor and was supposed to pick him up at the academy, she would have been the only one to blame. She tried to get rid of that thought as soon as possible. She paused when she saw the final report. Even though it was more than 2 years old, there was nothing else between it and when he first went to school. Something else should be here, anything else. An accident during a sparring match at the academy, a cut from handling kunai, or even a sick day would have shown up. It seemed like no one ever heard about any of his injuries. She didn't like what it could mean. Still, she kept reading the last report until she was so scared that she dropped the page. When she read Yakushi's report, she thought it was possible, but for it to turn out to be true? It also seemed impossible because it happened 2 years after they left. Unless the reported leftover chakra had stayed with him for those 2 years, doing nothing but delaying the inevitable withdrawal that happened to everyone whose bodies became dependent on foreign chakra. And even worse, she had been here. Right here in Konoha, she hadn't even done anything. She could say she didn't know, but no one in the medical field knew she was the child's godmother except Shizune. More than that, many people didn't even know she was back, and those who did knew she was retired. What could have been the reason they sent for her? Even though chakra withdrawal was rare, it did happen, and there were very expensive treatments to help the body adjust to the loss of chakra and strengthen the chakra system again. She had been here, though. She could have helped, figured out what was wrong at the start so he wouldn't have to go through it, or done something, anything. She hadn't, though. And now it didn't look like she could do anything to fix what should have been a good relationship. The person who never was. Shizune hadn't planned to go back to the compound until much later that night, but she ran into a big problem. What in the world am I going to do all day? She didn't have any errands to run, her friends at the hospital were busy, and she didn't have enough money to go shopping for the rest of the day, nor did she have the desire to carry whatever she bought for the rest of the day. She could tell from the hair, though, that maybe not everyone she knew was busy today. Naruto looked happy as he walked down the streets of Konoha, but she did notice his slow pace and the bandages that covered most of his torso and a good part of his upper arms. She felt pretty sure that he also had some on his legs. He saw her before she could get close to him. It's been a while, Shizune. I hope you've been well. Yes, I'm fine, thank you. It's good to see you again, Naruto. You look pretty happy. I am, and things have been going pretty well, he said. This made her think of Tsunade's mood when she asked for his medical records. She didn't share her master's happiness, but she thought his good luck would continue. I'm happy to hear that. What did you do today? No, you didn't need anything. Oh, no, I was just hoping I could join you. Tsunade-sama needs some space right now, so I'm trying to stay out of the compound. Oh, I see. Well, if that's the case, I guess I was just about to find some peace and quiet and eat lunch early. Would you like to join me? She gave him a smile. That would keep her busy for at least an hour. After that, she would have to find something else to do for the rest of the day. I'd love to. Every step she took made her feel like she was on fire, but she kept going because she was determined to find the answers she was looking for. Her mother thought she should be at home resting in her bed right now, but she couldn't wait any longer, and there was only one person who could tell her what she needed to know. She still had traces of molten chakra in her body, and she cursed herself again for trying to use Mito's chakra during a fight. Not only was it wrong for her to use something against someone she wasn't actually fighting, but she was also foolish to think the Biju would let her when all it wanted was for her to reconnect them. Mito would never hurt her brother, and she didn't know why. On the other hand, Naruto would, and the image of his bloodied body standing defiantly wouldn't leave her mind. Even if he didn't hate her after that, which he should have, Mito did. After the fight, she tried to talk to the Biju, but it was so angry that she ran away right away. She didn't know if Mito had seen her when she was mad, but she didn't want to find out. The only way to stop the terrible, angry screams in her head was to cut off her connection to the sentient mass of chakra, and she didn't think it would be reopened in the next few days. Most likely because the Biju was angry, another wave of pain shot through her body, and she was very thankful that it wasn't as bad as the pain she had felt when she first drew on the chakra. Mito was trying to stop her from using the chakra she had called up around her, and it felt like her body was being torn apart as it melted in the sun. Now, it was just a burning feeling all over her body. She could handle it. No matter how bad the pain was, time always seemed to move more slowly when someone was in pain. Her journey seemed to take days. She finally got where she was going. The Yamanaka homestead had been through a lot worse. Everything about it looked old and worn out, just like the Yamanaka heiress, who walked up from a street nearby. The blonde stopped when she saw her, but she quickly kept going to the compound. Did you need something? Her voice was tired and defeated, but there was still a hint of pride in it, as if she was counting the fact that she was still holding on as a small victory. Naruto was at a loss for words for a moment. I must know. About a Naruto. When the Yamanaka heard his name, he seemed startled and quickly looked around to make sure he wasn't there. I thought you knew him, so I was hoping you could tell me what happened to him, Naruto said. Ino's eyes got a little sad, almost to the point of pity, and she led the other genin into the compound. Since you're Uzumaki, I guess this could be passed off as clan business, especially since it has to do with your clan. Ino took her straight to the main house and up the stairs. Along the way, they passed different groups of Yamanaka clan members who were running around. Naruto thought it looked like some of the lower floors of the Hokage Tower. Ino took it upon herself to explain, as if she had known someone would think that. We'll talk about why later, but for now I'm in charge of the Yamanaka. Mother and father have moved into a guest house, and the main house has become a sort of office building. The Uzumaki heiress asked, does all of this really need to happen for one clan? For one running well? No, the Yamanaka clan is not running well. I've been trying my best to turn things around, but all I've done is buy time. I see. He gave her a sad look. No, you don't. You have no idea. When they got to a door, another clan member was there with a small stack of folders and a cup of coffee. Ino thanked the man for both and went into her office. Ino put the folders in a neat pile on the desk and sat down in the big armchair. She pointed to one of the other seats, which Naruto took right away. So, what did you want to know? Sitting in such a big chair made the young Yamanaka look even smaller, and it added to the sense that she was a tired loser. I want to know why you tried to warn me about Ni-kun. You didn't believe me before, Ino said with a raised eyebrow as she began to sort through the papers on her desk. She was able to get some work done before her team meeting that morning, but she would still be here until close to midnight. She was lucky to have coffee, because it was one of the few things she let herself have. What's different? Ni-kun and I fought, gods above, are you okay? The girl's voice right away was both comforting and a little bit scary. Did she really dislike her brother that much? I'm fine, I wasn't hurt, she said. Ino looked at her like she was crazy. She finally got the words out, you must be one hell of a kunoichi, he would rip me apart. Naruto's cheeks got a little red as she thought about that morning. He could have, but he didn't draw blood, he cut my top open. It's surprising to me that he would be so kind. Naruto said, I want to say it's because we're family, but I think it's more likely because we sparred before team meetings and he wasn't going to take me away from my team. That sounds more like him. All he had to do to kill you was show you that he could, she said with a bitter laugh. That was a good lesson for us Yamanaka. Really? Right now, we are nothing. We don't have any money, any missions, or any help. The people of Konoha have turned against us, and shinobi are staying as far away from us as they can. That is awful. That's your brother. He did this because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. He didn't. Yes, he did. The people of Konoha don't believe us about the wolves because they think we made them up to save face, but I can assure you that they are very real. Why is that relevant to this? Your brother has some very dangerous friends. We found this out when I turned him against us. They may have stopped now, but we're still paying for my stupidity. Naruto didn't want to believe what she was hearing, but it sounded too much like the person she had seen that morning. Someone who used to be her brother. She didn't know what he was at the moment, but she was going to find out. She asked with grim determination, tell me all about it. So she did it. She ended up choosing anger. Sadness and guilt weighed heavily on her shoulders, but it was anger that helped her look past her own mistakes and the pain they had caused for her son. Because of her, he was homeless, but others could have taken him in. He was hurt, but Tsunade could have helped him recover. He was suspected of betraying his country, but he should have been trusted. He had problems with the Yamanaka, but someone should have stepped in to keep things from getting out of hand. He changed his name, but there should have been someone to help him with clan politics. When he turned against the Yamanaka, he should have gotten help from other clans right away. When she could think about the supposed failures of others, she could forget about her own, because if she thought about how her mistakes hurt her son, she would be filled with sadness. She couldn't let that happen, and she couldn't give in to misery after everything her son had been through. No, now was the time to make things right and show him that she had made a series of mistakes and was willing to fix the damage they had caused. So, when she thought about what other people had done in her absence, the guilt went away and was replaced by an unholy rage that threatened to make Hai no Kuni's name very literal. It would be nothing compared to the 1,000 suns that burned inside her and demanded to be set free as payback for her first child's suffering. If Yugo hadn't pushed her back down in her seat and reminded her that she was in her son's apartment, she would have gone on a rampage right then, attacking everyone in the village in a blind rage that was likely to end with her dead or in jail. But even though the fire was out for now, her anger remained. When the suns went away, they left behind a miserable cold that took away any hope of happiness and left her with nothing but a desire to hurt those who had hurt her son, whether directly or indirectly. The razor-sharp ice in her heart wanted blood, and Kushina would love to tell. She was smart enough to realize she couldn't be as impulsive as she usually was. It was her hasty actions that caused her son's problems in the first place, some more wouldn't help. Uzumaki's heat wouldn't work in this situation, so her anger would have to be frozen. The only question would be where her anger would be directed first. Kurenai came to mind, but it was quickly discarded. Yes, the woman had let her down, but she had to admit that all she had asked was that she check on her son and help if she needed it. She might not have taken him in, but she had no way of knowing if she was helping him. The fact that she knew where he lived showed that they at least talked to each other, which was more than she could say about others. Tsunade was one of the others, and as far as she knew, she had never spoken to her son. Some might say she was jumping to conclusions, but Yugo had said that she rarely left her compound, and the woman hadn't given her any new information, so it wasn't hard to see that Naruto hadn't seen his godmother. He could have gone to the compound, but she never told him about his godmother because she thought it was likely he would never meet the nomadic drunk. She mentioned her in the letter she left for him, but since everyone was already locked in the compound, that didn't help much. Friends within the clan came next. The Uzumaki had always been friendly with the Aburame in Konoha, and they were also close with the Inuzuka, whose pack loyalty was similar to their own belief that family was more important than anything else. She might be able to understand why they wouldn't help him with the Yamanaka after he gave up the Uzumaki name, but there was no reason why they couldn't help him before that happened. He probably would have been fine with the Aburame, but she had to reluctantly admit that even though the two clans got along, they weren't that close. They weren't very Aburame when they went out of their way to help him after she left without telling them. Like the Inuzuka with their pack and the Uzumaki with their family, they were mostly worried about the hive. Since Naruto wasn't a member of their hive, a random act of kindness and goodwill towards an outsider wouldn't make much sense to them. They also couldn't have thought about improving their relationship with the Uzumaki. From what they could tell, Naruto wasn't wanted. In fact, they may have stayed away from him because they didn't want to make her and her daughter angry by helping him. The Inuzuka were probably like-minded. After all, if the Uzumaki pack didn't want him, why should they? No one knew if that was even close to the truth, and her attempts to defend them only made her madder. That anger had one last target, the Yamanaka. They were the ones who, however indirectly, made him give up the Uzumaki name, and they were the ones who publicly opposed him. Whoever was against her son was against Uzumaki Kushina. So they were the perfect targets for her anger. As Yamanaka Ino kept working, the only sound was the light scratching of a pen. Naruko had finished her story a while ago, but she still couldn't move. The Yamanaka heiress didn't seem to mind as she kept working through the stack of papers on her desk. In fact, Naruko had the feeling that the girl Ino, young woman, was enjoying the quiet company while she worked. Considering how busy the girl was trying to run her clan and start her career as a kunoichi, it wasn't surprising that she didn't have time for socializing. The heiress probably enjoyed just being around someone else. But she didn't move from her seat because she was thinking about the young woman's social life. Instead, she was thinking about her brother's interactions with the clan. Even though her heart shouted in disbelief, she knew it was true. Her brother had always been proud, even though most people didn't see it because he avoided them, and at one point she liked to think of herself as his pride. And while that may have changed, it seems like his prideful nature hasn't. The Yamanaka heiress hurt his pride, so he crushed them in retaliation. The heiress said that he had made himself an army so that he could crush his enemies into the dust. Most of Konoha's people didn't even know they existed because they were kept in the dark, and rumors of this shadow army only hurt the Mindwalker's reputation in Konoha. She had to wonder if he would have acted the same way if she had gotten hurt. Before she left with her mother, the answer was definitely yes. But now, after being away for 4 years, she had a sinking feeling that he wouldn't do a thing. From the fact that he had been questioned by Ino's father, which was leaked to the heiress by the man himself, to the suspicion that surrounded his bringing Yamanaka Tatsuki's body to the clan head and the subsequent accusations of murder and calls for blood, it was easy to see that she had missed a lot while she was away. Even though she wished it weren't true, she couldn't deny that these things could easily change her beloved brother. Her own experiences suggested it was true. She admits that it scared her. How much had he actually changed? What else had happened that the Yamanaka heiress didn't know about? And to what extent did he blame his family for his bad luck? She stood up and thanked the Yamanaka heiress for her time before walking out of the compound. Her mother needed to know. She got home in a few minutes, hours, or maybe even seconds. Time didn't seem to have any effect on her anymore because her thoughts were going in all different directions. She found her mother in the study, hurriedly writing a letter with a sense of urgency she hadn't seen in a long time. When the Uzumaki matriarch turned to look at her, her eyes were burning. Not one that spoke only of determination, but mostly of anger and revenge. Mom? Yes, sweetie. The way she answered through her teeth was all Naruko needed to know she was serious. Her mother was clearly struggling to control her anger, which meant that whatever she was doing was very important. Naruko took a deep breath to try to relax. I discovered what happened to Ni-kun. Her mother seemed a little surprised, but instead of asking what had happened, she asked how she knew that. Apparently, she had recently heard the same thing from someone else. I talked to Yamanaka heiress Ino, and she told me what's been going on. When her mother heard about the clan of Mindwalkers, she immediately frowned. The anger in her voice surprised Naruko. She didn't remember her mother ever talking about anyone with such hatred and disdain. No, I think she was telling the truth, even though she didn't make herself look very good. Probably just wanted sympathy, her mother said. I didn't get that impression. The Yamanaka have always been manipulators, she said as she got up from her desk and gathered a small stack of letters. You shouldn't believe what they say. But shouldn't we at least hear them out before making a decision? No, so you don't want to know what she said, do you? It doesn't matter what happens, the Yamanakas will be taken care of soon enough. But, no, Butts, I need to talk to a few people, and I'll be back later. She left after saying that. Naruto wondered if this is how Naruto felt when his friends first left him. Obviously, if that was the case, she would have to wonder if her mother would really be back later. She was raging in the darkness. She had been so close, so damned close. With a lot of work, she was able to see the fight through Naruto's eyes, and she was finally able to look at the young man who meant everything to her. Her warden was right there, within reach of the girl, but she was still stuck here and couldn't touch him. It was frustrating to feel so familiar Chakra's signature, but to see him, she had never been so annoyed before. Obviously, it was all worth it when he stopped and looked at Naruto. At that moment, his eyes weren't hard. Instead, they were filled with a little bit of respect for how well Naruto had handled losing her top, which made the girl's heart soar when she saw it through his eyes. She had been so happy, in fact, that she didn't even notice when her host put chains on her beloved warden. When she saw his blood, she was furious and upset, but she was very happy when he used the chakra chains she had taught him to beat his sister. As a chakra being, she was worried when she saw his black chains and how they seemed to be sucking in light instead of glowing like a chakra manifestation should. However, she didn't have time to worry because her host started calling on her chakra. Refilling her energy after her warden stopped such a draining attack would have been fine, as would have been healing any wounds she might have gotten or using her chakra like a small burst of adrenaline to improve her reflexes. But when her host dared to think she'd be able to use any form of the Biju cloak, she brought the wrath of the Kyuubi no Kitsune upon herself. Her anger was seen and heard. They had an easy agreement. Naruto would give her back to her warden, and in exchange, the warden would not only give Naruto access to her nearly infinite supply of chakra, but also help her use it. The girl had never felt her chakra's full power until she stopped protecting her from it. Hopefully, the girl will remember this lesson. But whether Naruto learned her lesson or not, it didn't change the fact that this would make it harder for her to keep her part of the deal, which was a very simple one. As long as she was with her warden, the girl would have unrestricted, guided access to the most powerful source of chakra available. And then she did this stupid thing. She was painfully stopped from using it, but that wasn't enough to make up for her error. Proper punishment would be a motivator, and what better punishment than one you give yourself? She'd still let the girl in, but she wouldn't be helping her anymore. It would hurt, it would be hard, and she would only have herself to blame each time she used the chakra of the great Kyuubi no Kitsune. Maybe then she'd realize how seriously she wanted to go back to her wonderful warden. And what if she didn't do it? Well, Mito would have to be more involved in trying to convince the girl that this was important. Not just for Mito, but for herself as well. Mito could do bad things with her chakra. Naruto and Shizune didn't part ways until 3 that afternoon. As soon as Shizune disappeared into the crowds of Konoha's market district, Naruto looked at a nearby wolf. He shouldn't have been able to see them, so the wolf wanted to be seen. This suspicion was confirmed when they pointed to an alley nearby. Looks like something happened. He moved through the crowds of people, slipped between 2 buildings, and went back until the shadows covered him completely. It was only a few seconds before the wolf joined him, and when he did, he immediately got down on his knees in front of him. Naruto-sensei, Mai Taiko and Sai Taiko are waiting for you in your office. And did they tell you why? The wolf shook his head after saying, no, Naruto-sama. But they said you'd want to know as soon as possible. I think it might have something to do with the latest report from one of our global operatives, but I don't know where the report came from or what it said. Alright, go back to whatever you were doing before. On your orders, Naruto-sama. With a bow, he disappeared, and Naruto walked back into the light of the afternoon sun. If Mai and Sai thought it was important, it probably was. In fact, if it was so important that it had to be brought to his attention in this way, it was even more important than that. So, he didn't waste any time getting to the den and heading to his office, where his 2 most trusted wolves were waiting. They both said, Naruto-sama, and Mai gave him a small smile while Sai saluted. Sai and Mai, I heard that you both needed to talk to me, he said as he sat down behind his desk and pointed to the seats in front of it. Yes, Naruto-sama, confirmed Mai as she sat down and turned to face Sai. Do you want to get started? He answered, might as well. We just got a report from Keigo, who was sent to watch the situation in Kirigakure no Sato and Mizu no Kuni. It doesn't have anything to do with the bloodline purges or the rebellion yet, but it does mention an opportunity we'd be crazy not to look into. Oh? Naruto wrinkled his brow. What did he uncover? Gado, a shipping tycoon, is in charge of Nami no Kuni right now. He is one of the richest men in the world, if not the richest, because he runs the ports there and is involved in all kinds of illegal activities. And how is this good for us? You're not saying we should try to kill him, are you? You should know that would be suicide for the wolves because the rest of the world would tear us apart. We know that, Naruto-sama, replied Mai. Keigo says that a bridge builder is trying to break Gado's hold on the country. He might try to contact Konoha for help, but if we help him instead, Nami no Kuni will owe us. Naruto scratched his chin, thought for a moment, and then shook his head. He said, "You're looking at this from the wrong side. It is a good chance to help the people of Wave, but it is also a good chance to help Gado." The two wolves looked shocked at each other. She asked him, I don't mean to question you, Naruto-sama, but you've helped bandits and warlords in the past. Do you really want to do that now, when there's another choice? Next to her, Sai gave her a nod to show that he agreed with her. I can either help the people of Wave in hopes that we can get something out of it, or I can help Gado, start getting paid right away for our work, and eventually take over. Sai said, it would be hard to take over if everyone hated us. An iron fist like Gado's wouldn't work for us because we don't have nearly as many friends as he does. Part of taking over is weakening Gado. If our people are there under his authority, they can help protect the citizens from any hired muscle he has. We gain a reputation as fair enforcers on Gado's paycheck, so when we turn on him, the people will be more likely to accept our control. For the most part, we can let them do what they want. What we really need is control of the ports, which gives us instant power. Mai said, there's also the question of how much money Gado has with him right now, which made Naruto smile. That's a nice little bonus, but we're going to have to call back some of our agents. How are things in the Land of Lightning? Unfortunately, we're not making much progress, Sai said. We're helping out 2 gangs of thieves over there right now, right? You're right. Then pick the weakest one, back him all the way, wipe out the competition, and leave him alone. We can come back later and pick up where we left off. If he gets wiped out, that's okay. This chance is much more valuable. I'm sure the wolves will be happy. Sai knew that even with their current tasks, the wolves he was in charge of were getting restless. They needed something big that would let them show off all of their skills. Getting paid to fight for warlords and small-time bandits was better than nothing, but it wasn't what they really wanted. If Gado has even a small amount of his wealth stored in Nami no Kuni, they will be well fed. So well, in fact, that we may need more wolves to make sure none of it goes to waste. He paused and looked at the 2 people sitting in front of him. That brings us to the next thing that needs to be done. Sai, you now have full control of the wolves. You will answer to Mai, who will keep me informed. Of course, Naruto-sama, but can I ask why? I recently got control of a second group, which I will call the Flock. Their leader will also answer to Mai, who will manage both groups and report to me. Mai asked, who is their leader? Hinata. The 2 of them looked at him as if he had told them he was going to become a hooker. Our shy little lamb. Mai was the first to be able to talk again. That's why I call it the Flock. It seems that after I broke Hinata's first seal and then her second, some of the branch members came to believe that Hinata wasn't meant to join the branch family. I know it sounds strange, but I can see how a group could come to that conclusion. Of course, being Hyuga, they've taken it even further and now think Hinata is a goddess. Sai couldn't breathe. He was able to get out, a goddess? Yes, they know of her wolf guards but not of us, and I want it to stay that way. But that means I have new forces here in Konoha, so you can focus your attention outside our walls. I want you to start recruiting more. Find a few of the wolves who know the most about the training you went through and bring more into our packs. We'll have to seal them, but I should be able to replicate its effects properly. I get it. Did you want to get rid of all your guards? No, leave a few, but no more than 4. Now that we have new eyes, we should no longer have to watch Konoha. Yes, of course. Is that all? That's right, you're free to go, Naruto said, then turned to look at Mai. I need you to talk to Hinata and tell her what I've said here. You might want to wait until after tomorrow's team training so that the other Hyuga don't see you. We need them to think their goddess is in charge here or we might lose them. I get it. Do you want me to do anything else? No, you're free to go. Just know that I've already given Hinata orders for the flock, which she should have given to you by now. She probably won't have anything else for you for a while, but make sure she stays in charge. Having influence in the Hyuga clan could be a huge help to us. She gave him a quick bow and said, "Of course, as you say, Naruto-sama." Then she left him in his office. Naruto gave a deep sigh and rubbed the bridge of his nose as he leaned back in his chair. The Hyuga was a surprise, and the chance in Wave gave him a chance to start playing on a global scale much sooner than he thought was possible. He was done with the Yamanaka. They should keep other clans from turning him away if he tries to talk to them, but he still had to choose a clan that could help his pack. Then, of course, there was the mess with his family coming back. Kushina was too stubborn to give up, but he didn't want to have anything to do with the woman. He had his own family and life now, and she didn't fit into it yet. He also didn't plan to give her one. But he was sure she would try, and he was sure that it would cause him trouble in the future. But he couldn't do anything about it except have her killed, which he didn't want to do and wasn't sure he could do. Even though his wolves were pretty much the same as Anbu, Kushina was a very skilled Junin. There were too many chances that he would lose some of his wolves, and if they did kill her, the leaf would be even weaker. So, he would just have to deal with her and whatever she did as it came up. Even though she wouldn't strike at him, at least not on purpose, and wasn't what he would call an opponent, he hated the idea of letting someone else go first. Not only did it give them an edge, but it was also very hard to wait. He'd have to find something else to do until she showed her hand, and he'd have to hope it didn't come at a bad time. Though, with his luck, she was likely to try something at the worst possible time. He breathed out again. Even though things were getting better, there was nothing he could do but wait. He needed something to do. The Hyuga clan had a lot of problems. That doesn't mean things were always normal in the clan, but lately, something just didn't feel right. She was the heir and the future leader of the powerful Hyuga clan, but since her sister was marked, the branch family respected her less. She would, of course, punish them, but all they did was smile and take it, as if there was a great joke she wasn't in on. Then there was the mark of her sister. It was gone, for Christ's sake. Seals don't just fall off, and she had used it against her sister, so it was clear that it had taken hold. However, it had just disappeared. After that, they marked her again and gave her a punishment for losing the mark, but the next day, her new mark stopped working. At that point, they couldn't do anything because there was no way to remove the seal and none of the Hyuga knew enough about seals to try to fix the one on her brow that wasn't working. Soon after, she heard that the Yamanaka heiress was trying to get her sister to do something, but she didn't know what. The elders and her father seemed too annoyed by the strange seal to care, though. When Uzumaki Naruto stepped in and gave up his name to fight against the Mindwalker clan, the Hyuga dropped the case. They were sort of represented and didn't really care who won, even though it seemed unlikely that anything would happen, but she was sure they hoped something bad would happen to the disgraced former heiress during the fight. Instead, the Yamanaka were brought to their knees, which surprised them. Her father had told her that day that the boy named Naruto might not be very strong, especially since he had given up his clan name, but that he must have some powerful friends. That day's lesson was about alliances and diplomacy, and her father said he was very tempted to let her try it out in the real world with the boy who used to be in Uzumaki. In the end, he decided not to do it because he didn't want to be seen as being against the Yamanaka. That, in turn, taught the clans of Konohagakure no Sato another lesson about keeping the balance between them. It wasn't one of the more fun things she had learned. But other than that, the branch family, or at least most of them, seemed much happier than they should have been and certainly happier than any Hyuga should be. Something had happened or was happening, and based on how happy her sister seemed lately, she was pretty sure she was in the middle of it. The heiress of the Hyuga clan, Hyuga Hanabi, was going to find out what. Anyone could have put it there. Yugo had been here before, Anko and Kurenai could get in, and Mai could have easily asked one of the wolves to leave it for her. Even so, he knew it had to be from his godfather even before he opened it. He still didn't know who that was, though. The only real clue he had was that the Kusanagi was mentioned in the letter that was left with Marie's tooth. The Kusanagi had been talked about a lot in the past, but not recently. Or, at least, nothing new that he could find out about it. And that made him wonder even more about this strange godparent. He opened the box, which was small enough to hold in one hand, and took out a golden charm. Tight rings had been bent into a circle that looked like a snake's coils. The medallion had a hole in the middle, and a simple black cord held it together. At first glance, this probably looked like the simplest gift he'd ever gotten. But a quick look at the note that came with it would show that that's not true. The High Priest of A, the golden serpent god of the sun, was the first person to own the amulet of A. When A's light shines on it, you can give the great serpent your blood as a tribute in exchange for helping one of his children. Everyone who wears this picture of the serpent god is safe from snakes, even those who were ordered by a snake sage. And everything fell into place. The picture of the snake, an amulet of snakes, a sword that was thought to be cursed, putting explosive corpses in the Yamanaka compound to help him, and keeping information from people who weren't important enough to know. Who else but him could have found the legendary Kusanagi? Who else but the worst traitor to ever leave Konoha could have so little information? So, it had to be. There was nothing else to do. His godfather was a member of the Sanin named Orochimaru. He wasn't sure what to think about it. But it was strange that, even though he always signed his letters as his godfather, this one said, "Your loving godparent." How odd.
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.